Yeah, let's do them. And here is Susie Kahlich, who's
Hello.
yeah, so Susie is a martial arts expert and the founder of Pretty Deadly Self-Defense, a groundbreaking self-defense program designed specifically for women. After surviving a violent crime in year 2000, Susie began her martial arts journey studying the ancient Japanese art of ninjutsu for over 2 decades. She became the first woman to earn a master level black belt at Yamato Dojo in LA in its 25-year history. Since launching Pretty Deadly in 2016, Susie has scaled the program from a single location to a multinational company with trainers and courses around the globe. Her work has impacted violent crime survivors, trauma victims, and refugee communities across the US, UK, Europe, and Southeast Asia. In addition to her self-defense work, Susie has led seminars and workplace consultations on sexual harassment policies for tech startups, corporate media, co-working spaces, think tanks, and blockchain companies across Europe and the UK. Fantastic. Just to read all that, in your bio, it's amazing. So,
Thank you.
Susie, yeah, thank you so much. And so, where are you today? Give us a background.
Thank you. Do you mean physically, literally, or
Yeah, like
again?
where you live, and yeah.
Right. Well, I just relocated. I've been based in Europe for the past 14 years.
Mm,
Um, as you noted, launching Pretty Deadly in 2016 was from Berlin. So that's
mm,
where I was for the last 8 years, and I just relocated back to the United States. So
wow.
now I'm in San Francisco, or the Bay Area, not exactly San Francisco. Currently just hanging out with my family
Mhm.
and just, yeah, this is where I'll be for the next little bit of my journey. Who knows for how long? I'm one of those people who kind of moves around a lot, so you never really know. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's where we are. So Pretty Deadly already has a little presence in the United States, but we'll be focused on growing it more here. The time is really right for Pretty Deadly and our really specific business model, um, especially with the way that things have been changing politically and economically and with social progress as well. So I feel it's a really great time to be here. And that's why I relocated, because I wanted to be here to kind of shepherd the company and the work that we do personally to make sure that we maintain our quality and our high standards and as we continue to grow. So yeah, that's
Wow.
where I am.
Fantastic. I absolutely love that. And so, you're obviously a very international organization now. How are you
Yes.
finding that running business from all continents?
That is something I never had envisioned when I first started on this path. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It's challenging as well because there's a lot of subtle cultural differences, especially in terms of trauma, gender-based violence. In some ways, they're the same everywhere you go because humans are humans. But in other ways, there are little cultural differences that are really fascinating to navigate. I mean, it's a challenge. I'm not going to tell you that I never get frustrated because I do, but it's also really, really interesting to get to know these kinds of aspects about different regions of the world and different people and different cultures and why they approach things the way that they do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine the cultural differences, amongst the Western world and then Southeast Asia is huge. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, because even like certain parts of Europe as well, very different. Like, the countries can be like 2 hours, away from each other, but yeah, they're just
right,
so different. Yeah, and I
right.
think.
But even between the UK and the US and the EU, and I mean really everywhere is
Mm,
has its own unique identity and characteristics and yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Oh no, fantastic. Yeah. So in terms of the whole self-defense program that you do, I just think it's absolutely amazing, and it's very much in line with somatic healing, which is what it's quite popular now, and there's so many studies that are out there saying that even though we know that trauma manifests physically, it shows up as tension, pain, restricted movements, and a lot of time health as well. So many of the chronic illnesses are trauma induced. So, obviously in your course, I know that you help trainers to actually identify the signs of stored trauma in the body, and you actually teach them how to safely manage it in the training. Can you explain that? I just find that fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to precedent this by saying that in our course, we don't want to put trainers in a position, and we don't want to put participants in a position where they feel that they have to share their trauma or share their incidents. Our approach is actually to keep things really positive, and we're motivated by fear. No, we're not. Oh my God, that's exactly what we're not doing. We're motivated by fun rather than fear,
Yeah.
simply because we feel that I mean, especially as women, we already know the dangers that we're up against. We don't really need to be reminded in a class, et cetera, et cetera. So, with that caveat uh, said, the when we're working with trainers and when we're certifying them to teach self-defense, we do want to, we can't erase the fact that the reason that people are taking self-defense is because of gender-based violence or any kind of violence that they might experience.
Mhm.
Um, and we want to make sure that trainers are able to identify when trauma manifests itself physically so that they can ensure for the safety of everyone in their course, right? Sometimes the way that trauma comes out is people, they get very, very disconnected from their bodies. So they feel that it's really hard to control the speed or the power with which they're executing a move. So if you're punching somebody holding a pad, which is generally supposed to be safe, but if you're really just flying off and going at it as hard as you possibly can because you don't feel that you have that kind of control over your body, that's really dangerous for the person that you're training with and can
Mhm.
be dangerous for you as well.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that trainers can identify when that's happening. And it's usually around like people who kind of have very herky-jerky movements or who will openly say, I don't know how to control what it is that I'm doing. So
Interesting.
we have like a whole list of little subtle signs that we also look for when someone looks like they're about to be triggered or someone, it's little behavioral differences that we go through with our trainers during their certification course to be able to identify those and not necessarily to be able to step in and say, oh, let me, be your ersatz therapist, but more let me make sure that we're going to adjust this environment so that you're safe. We want to prevent triggers from happening, not because we don't want people to express their emotions, but because our trainers are not therapists. They're not trained like you are,
Mhm.
right? So we want to make sure that they are in an environment that they can handle and that their clients can handle as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's basically that. And this came about from me teaching the course and working with people who had told me that they were coming from really severe long-term trauma and watching how these patterns kind of played out over and over
Mhm.
again in different individuals.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the herky-jerky movement is really the one that pops to mind first. It's something that, especially when I'm working with martial artists, they're usually really surprised to learn about this. I don't know if you've ever taken any martial arts classes.
Yeah, when I was younger, but strangely
Right.
enough, I struggled with coordination myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And a lot of it is just being just so disconnected because so often in trauma, whatever the event is, we have a tendency to center ourselves in the story. And that's really important
Mm.
because we need to feel like we have some sort of control over a situation that we in reality have no control over.
Yeah,
So when we're retelling the story of our trauma to ourselves, of course we center ourselves in that story because we have to just for our own sanity.
me too.
But what happens also is that we tend to feel like somehow there's been a betrayal. I betrayed myself because I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't fight back. I didn't do whatever. Or if I'm able to say, like, it wasn't me, my body was just reacting,
Mm.
then we might feel like our body has betrayed us.
Yeah,
How could you do this to me? I thought you were supposed to protect me. I thought I was supposed to have an innate self defense system. I
yeah.
thought that we were supposed to we were supposed to, not survival of the fittest is not the one I'm looking for, but we have this like innate will to live,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and yet in this instance, my body didn't do anything to help preserve my life, or so I think, so I believe.
Mm. Okay. Yeah.
And when we experience that kind of betrayal, then we start to disconnect ourselves from our own bodies, because it's like, how can I ever trust you again? But it's like a really bad relationship, but
Yeah.
I'm stuck with you and I
Mm.
can't trust you.
Yeah.
you know s-
Absolutely.
yeah, so then
Mm.
we end up with this like difficulty with coordination, because we need to be able to trust ourselves in order to have fine motor skills, and we need to have patience with ourselves as well, and for coordination and balance and mobility and all of these things. And
Mm.
when you're so disconnected due to trauma, of course you lose some of those skills.
You do, yeah. And so, but when it obviously happened to you in 2000, I mean, what happened after that? So, did you experience everything that you're speaking about now?
Oh man, that is really hard for me to answer.
Yeah.
Not because it just because it was a really long time ago.
All right.
Um, and because I went straight into martial arts, I mean,
Mm.
I think I could safely say that I was discoordinated.
Yeah.
I would use the term discoordinated rather than uncoordinated, because I know that there was a sense of coordination before.
Mm.
And then afterwards, certainly a lot of like bumping into things and fumbling, um, which I counted as part of my post-traumatic stress. But yeah, that was absolutely a part of it.
Mm.
Going straight into a pretty intense martial arts practice, it's
Yeah.
hard to say whether you're coordinated or not, because I couldn't do anything anyway. I
Oh,
mean, it was not easy stuff to learn. So yeah,
yeah.
but I'm sure that
Wow.
that was probably a part of it. Me being in it as a student, it's really hard for me to take a step back and say, yes, this is how I was behaving. I'd have to actually ask my sensei.
Interesting. Yeah, because the fact that, you were the first woman to actually earn a master level black belt, that is a huge achievement in itself. And so, do you think a lot of that was induced by what had happened to you as well? Because that happens a lot with trauma survivors. You can either go down the route of, just addiction and, downward spiral, or a lot of people use that trauma as motivation to actually excel and succeed. Which can be detrimental because then you might be overworking and burning
Hmm.
out. So, do you,
Right.
like, how about your own experience with that?
Um, well, when I in the few days right after the attack that I survived, before I was in therapy and before I mean literally like the 1 or 2 days afterwards, I was thinking about how lucky I was to have a really good support network.
Okay.
I lived in Los Angeles at the time, and Los Angeles is very much a city of contrasts and opposites, where you have people who are quite wealthy and you have people who are very poor, and a
Mm.
lot of undocumented immigrants and all kinds of stuff happening. So I was aware of the fact that I was in a situation that I had access to mental health support. I had friends and family. I come from a background where violence against women is not okay. Therapy is okay. So read and speak the language. That's the dominant language here. I knew where to find help. I knew how to search for that and how to ask the right questions.
Mm.
And I thought about all the women who didn't have that, who
Mm.
might have immigrated but never learned how to read or write or speak English. So they
Okay.
can't read the billboards, they can't read the phone books. They might not know how to ask or what questions to ask
Mm.
when seeking
True.
help. They might be living in environments where domestic violence is actually accepted,
Mm.
right? And so those women are the women that I wanted to help. I was really conscious of the fact that I had this privilege, and that I was surrounded by millions of women who didn't. The
Mm.
reason I was thinking about this is because, as you know from trauma, initially that trauma will replay in your head over and over and over again.
Mm.
And that is such torture.
It
And
is.
I
Mm.
knew that I was going to be seeing a therapist, in a couple of
Okay.
days.
Oh,
But
that's
it
good.
was so torturous, I wanted to kill myself just to make it stop.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was thinking, how many women actually do, because they don't have the promise, they don't have the support, they don't have the access that I have.
Mm,
And that means that whoever committed that violence against them, they won.
yeah.
And that made me so angry.
Mm,
That
yeah.
idea that I wanted to find a way to help all women, and not just women who have access, who have all this privilege. So when I enrolled in martial arts, initially I enrolled in the way that a lot of people do, and a lot of women especially do after surviving a violent attack. They think, okay, now I'm going to learn to defend myself because I don't want this to ever happen again.
Okay.
Or if it does, I want to know what to do.
Mm,
The idea of using any of that information to build what I've built out of it was very far away from my consciousness at the time. Motive as it Was it motivating me to go forward, and was it motivating me to excel? Yes and no. I mean, I once I realized that I really resonated with the martial art that I was training in. Um, I wanted to go forward partly for myself.
mm,
I wanted to pursue becoming the first woman who achieved the master level black belt in my school, as a way to thank my teacher, because he gave me so much more than just techniques. He gave me a safe space to help
mm.
overcome the trauma and work through it, and gave me some more esoteric tools that also helped me deal with that trauma. And then eventually, as I started training women in the dojo, then that also became part of that question of, there's a cat, sorry.
Oh.
Um, and of course is like woken up and is like, oh, clearly you're on a Zoom call and I'm going to just get in front of it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so the motivation, it didn't, and I'm sorry, I'm taking a really long time to answer your question, but
It's
it wasn't a
okay.
straight
Good.
line of motivation.
Okay.
And that motivation to excel, it was kind of organic in the way that it
Yeah,
grew,
it
I would
sounds it.
say.
No, absolutely. And I love that. And I think that's really inspiring to hear that, you did have that support network. And I just feel like you were just so, intuitive, about it all, because you're right. So many of us, I mean, me included, something happens to us and we just shut down. And that was going to be my next kind of topic of discussion, is about
Yeah.
unconscious defenses, right?
Hmm.
Because whether it's through body language, through avoidance tactics, or hypervigilance, there's so many different strategies that we use to obviously try and not try and be aware of what happened to us. But with self-defense training, I feel like it brings a lot of awareness to these patterns, and it opens the door to healing.
Hmm.
So, can you identify any of the less obvious ways that people create defenses when they're actually dealing with unhealed trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something really interesting about, um, a sort of an intuitive response. And I think
Mm,
that most women, whether you shut down or not, I think most people think like, emotionally and mentally, I need to address this.
yeah.
Maybe not right now, but at some point. For me, it was because the incident was really big. I
Mm,
immediately understood, like, there's no way you're ever going to be able to get through this on your own. This is huge, and you have to take care of it right away. And you have to do it with professional help. Otherwise, it's going to kill you over time. That was lucky of me to sort of understand that. And I know a lot of people do immediately go into therapy, but they overlook the somatic aspect of it.
mm,
And I entered martial arts purely to learn how to defend myself, not understanding that there would actually be a really important connection. Um, some of the ways that, and so that leads to what you're talking about actually, is that oftentimes when we don't address the somatic aspect,
mm,
then we end up creating a physical defense that doesn't look like a defense. Often what we tell ourselves is like, I've shut down, I've given up, I don't know what to do anymore. We look at ourselves 10 years after an event and we think like, it just, it changed my life and it's ruined, or whatever it is. I've
mm.
had women talk to me about this after classes, and how
Wow.
terrible they feel about themselves. So they feel that their bodies have betrayed them, and then they feel that they've let themselves down as well.
Okay.
So some of the ways that this comes out is, women will gain weight,
Mm,
sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. They will let themselves go in that kind of like overall enveloping term. They stop getting their hair done. They stop caring about what they're, and it's not that they don't care, but they
mm,
stop making an effort to dress well. They stop, it just kind of snowballs into this this result of women who may think of themselves or may look at themselves as being kind of like dumpy and
mm.
not making an effort anymore. But all of this is actually part of self-defense,
Okay.
because
Mm,
when you're kind of unconsciously making yourself unattractive,
mm,
to the conventional public,
mm.
that's a form of defense. That's hopefully no one will see me. You can
Yeah.
try and make yourself look invisible. Well, that's a
Int-
weird sentence. Try and make yourself invisible. You
Yeah.
can try and make yourself unattractive or unappealing in the hopes that that will keep the spotlight off of you and
Mm,
prevent things from coming again in the future. And obviously, we see it in forms of, a lot of stiffness. We
yeah.
see it in forms of changes in sleep patterns, which isn't necessary. I mean, definitely it can be related to trauma, but also that's a vigilance. When you no longer allow yourself to fall into a deep sleep or you wake up a lot,
Mm,
you suddenly you become hyper attuned to anomalies of noise, for example.
yeah.
Yeah, all of these things are ways that we continue to defend ourselves again because we are disconnected from our bodies.
Yeah.
One of the things I've learned in my research is about sleep, actually. I
Okay.
was attacked in the middle of the night. And that was always a big fear. I think a lot of women have a fear of being attacked while we're sleeping.
Okay.
Um, so I was really worried about sleep. Can I ever really
Mm,
sleep again? And over the course of the years, as I was doing research about our innate and biological self defense systems, one of the things that I learned is that when we're sleeping, we know that our body is repairing,
yeah.
like things like from viruses and things that happen during the day. Our body is resting and repairing, but it's also running a systems check. So sleep is actually a really important component to your biological self-defense system.
Interesting.
And it's
Okay.
something that we can trust, even though it's really hard to build that trust back once it's been violated. But we can
Mm.
trust it because that is our body working for us. It's so
Oh,
amazing that it's actually just running this entire check the whole time you're
wow.
asleep.
Wow, that is interesting. So that's obviously the importance of REM sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that especially, when we're not getting enough rest, I know with myself, just having like two little ones who hardly ever let me sleep properly. I feel it. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, absolutely, I get that. And it's interesting what you said about the fact that one of the kind of ways that we might defend ourselves is to not look after ourselves, so that we don't present ourselves as well as we might have done before an attack, for example. I think a big one there is, the fact that we lose a lot of our femininity as well, in a lot of the masculine energies, comes up because then that creates that defense, doesn't it? The stiffness that you said. So I think it's really definitely something to, look at. And, you
I
see
think
it a lot as well, I think.
I'm sorry, do you mind if I
Oh, go
interject?
for
Because
it,
you're
go for
saying
it.
something really important to me. I think
Mm.
we don't lose our femininity. I think we hide it. I
Okay,
think so
interesting.
often women, on a subconscious level, I think across cultures, we still sort of believe that that you're targeted because you're pretty,
Mm.
or you're
Yeah,
targeted because you're sexy, or you're targeted simply because you're a woman. So we
yeah.
tend to start to hide that femininity. In a
Mm.
way, it's a little bit psychotic in the sense that we live and this is across all cultures that I've had exposure to. um Women are encouraged to be beautiful,
Yeah.
Be as beautiful as you can be.
Mm,
Whatever, however we define that beauty, you need to be beautiful. You need to be fit, healthy, have beautiful hair, beautiful eyes, beautiful makeup, blah, 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 beautiful clothes. And then we become the victims of violence. And especially when it's gender based violence, that beauty betrays us.
mm,
And I know I keep
interesting.
talking about betrayal, but I think that that's a
Interesting.
really important part of trauma that we
Mm,
often don't consider. So I think a lot of times when women, again, kind of don't care for themselves and cover themselves with unattractive clothing and hairstyles and no makeup and extra weight and all of that, it's really to hide the beauty and our own femininity. So
okay.
it's less about the masculine coming out to defend ourselves as it's
Mm,
about suppressing femininity
suppression,
in
yeah.
order to stay safe.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just feel like the fact that a lot of your clients or trainers, as they obviously come to you, and do you find a lot of them have also had to overcome their own trauma, which is why they've started to train with you?
Um, that's a good question. No, I would say not so much.
Mm,
So the trainers that we have are coming from a lot of different backgrounds.
mm.
Our business model is actually to bring self-defense to fitness trainers,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
certify them. Certainly, martial artists are welcome, and regular people are also welcome. But we're really focused on fitness trainers because that's a more familiar environment for women to learn self-defense in.
Okay. Mm,
So, but do they come with their own trauma? It's really varied. I would
mm,
say yes and no. We don't really talk about it. I'm always open to
mm.
being there if people need someone to listen to them,
Yeah,
but
that's good.
it's not certainly not a requirement.
Yeah.
Um, and it's something that I would say ultimately I don't really encourage
Okay.
because it's not the healthiest thing for
Mm,
someone to become a self-defense instructor as a way to work through their own trauma.
definitely. Yeah, 100%. I would agree with that. And I just feel like even though it's out there, somatic healing and to actually learn self-defense, anybody who has their own trauma to process should be doing that alongside this or before. So
Exactly.
yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, so in terms of any kind of examples of clients who have actually begun healing through Pretty Deadly's approach to self-defense, do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, we've had some really great examples. I would say what the one that I like to talk about the most isn't any particular person, but we've noticed that there's at least one person in every course. We have a 5-week course. There's one person in every course who comes back after class number 3 with a new hairstyle
Oh,
or a haircut or new hair.
hmm,
And
okay.
and we know as women the significance of that.
Yeah.
So that's just a personal point of pride. It's not something I built into the program. It just is what has happened. But we do have people who have registered for the course, grappling with some old trauma that was resurfacing and negatively affecting their lives. And through the courses helped them be able to navigate that in a way where they were kind of able to course correct in a
Mm,
way. So there's one woman in Berlin who, at the time, she was an assistant to, I think, a VP in her company. Um, the course helped her resolve a lot of those issues so that she was able to go on to become a regional manager and then an executive herself and just really, really excel on her career path,
brilliant. Yeah.
which she does attribute to Pretty Deadly, which is really great.
Excellent.
We've had women or we had another woman who joined very early when we first started out, and I don't know if she had experienced anything in particular, but
Mm,
she felt so more confident, much more confident after Pretty Deadly that she decided to tackle her next fear, which was a fear of water.
oh,
Um, So she decided to I think she already knew how to swim, but she still had a fear of water. But I don't know exactly what the progression here was. But next thing I heard about her is she was swimming with whales in Norway.
Brilliant. Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, that's really amazing.
That
So
is.
Pretty Deadly has given people a lot of confidence,
Mm,
help make them feel like, yes, I can do these things.
yeah.
There are women who felt confident enough to launch their own business,
Wow.
to join with other women that they met in the program to launch nonprofit organizations or do more
Mm,
volunteer work.
wow.
Um, I'm trying to think off the top of my head any particular case where, or like case study, I guess. Um, we've had women who have physical handicaps, who were able to take the course and then feel that they felt confident enough to pursue a higher education. One woman who was blind who joined us for a course, or she was taking one-on-one lessons more or less, but or small, like much more smaller groups for her. But that helped her give herself the confidence to feel that she would be able to enroll in university.
Wow.
And she became the first blind woman who was accepted into her university program. So,
Wow.
yeah, we've had a lot of really great success stories that I'm very, very proud of. I'm really happy to see women feeling like they can trust themselves enough to
Mm,
pursue their dreams and actually achieve them.
yeah. I mean, the big thing that I'm seeing there is that it helps to overcome fear.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Fear is a thing that always, pushes us back and, it just hinders us from achieving our goals. So,
Yeah, it can. I mean, I think it's overcoming fear, at least knowing that you can get through it.
mm, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if fear is something we're ever really going to be able to get rid of as human. I mean, fear is useful
Mm,
as well. You should be afraid of certain things,
yeah, true. Yeah,
But
exactly.
at
Yeah.
the same time, knowing that, there's certain fears that you can actually manage.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. It's all about just letting them not distress you too much, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
or
healing in
dictate your
itself.
life. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Oh, lovely. Yeah. So I know we're nearing the end. It's been fantastic. And I just wanted to ask kind of what is unique about the Pretty Deadly program compared to other self-defense approaches?
That's a great question. So, what's unique about Pretty Deadly is I like to think of us as user focused. So,
Okay.
we're focused more on body structure, body dynamics, natural
Mm,
movement, and we're very much focused on learning basic moves that you can trust that are really easy to remember for any scenario in your life. Traditional self defense programs tend to be very scenario based. So they're
okay.
really specific, So if a guy comes up to you and does this, that, or the other thing, you can do this or you can do that. It's usually full of information that can be really great, but complex to learn, complex to execute, really hard to remember. And again, very specific to certain scenarios.
Yeah.
So our approach is much more general in the sense of let's teach people exactly how your body works and where you can be strong
Mm,
and where you're doing movements in your everyday life that are actually self defense movements, but you don't recognize them that way because you're not applying them as self defense movements, which is great. It means you don't need to. But
yeah.
at the same time, we're showing women that a lot of what we already do is really high level self defense. We're already really, really good at it.
Mm,
We don't really need to change anything about ourselves, about our femininity, about how we exist in the world. We
mm,
don't really actually need to learn anything new. We just need
mm,
to change the way we look at the things we already know and apply those to self defense situations. I mean, obviously, we're teaching techniques like punching and kicking and stuff, but we're approaching that in a way that's much more organic to women,
mm.
and in an environment that's a lot more fun.
Yeah.
We're not focused on, I mean, even though we're talking about trauma, we're not focused on creating situations to remind people of their trauma or trigger their trauma or even encourage them to have like a trauma therapy session. we're focused on really loving getting to know your body,
Yeah. Yeah.
and getting to know how strong and powerful you are with some set techniques that you know you can always rely on,
Mm.
and and then go out and live the rest of your life.
Oh,
So,
wow. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like wow, it just sounds so feminine, just getting in tune with your body and really loving your body again. So I think
Yeah, but I mean, we have so much as women,
mm,
so much that we're told is not strength, is not power, is
mm,
not um I mean, people identify femininity with softness, and
true.
that's not always the case.
No, no,
I think
absolutely.
femininity is also determination and grit, and the ability to persevere against all odds, and
Mm.
doing the impossible. I was telling one of our trainers recently, who is a martial artist, and she was testing for a new belt level in her art, which is kung fu. And she was given an impossible situation for her test. She was the only woman among a bunch of men, and it was all men who were judging the test.
Oh, okay.
And they, I can't remember, they gave her like extra techniques to do that she wasn't really sure of. They scheduled her test for first thing in the morning after 5 days of hardcore training at a training camp, and they just made it impossible.
God, okay.
And so often as women, we're confronted with these situations,
Mm,
whether it's at work or whatever it is, we're given impossible tasks and we do them.
yeah, yeah.
We manage to do the impossible over and over and over again. And we get angry that we're put in those situations. And
Mm,
sometimes I think that anger overshadows the fact that we just did the impossible.
yeah, yeah,
And we should be angry at the structure of the world that's creating these scenarios, but we should also be really proud at how incredible we are.
yeah, yeah. So true. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. And again, something that has been kind of part of my life is just to try and get out of our comfort zones as much as we can, because
Hmm.
that helps to keep us resilient, and it also helps mental health, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Well, I think getting out of your comfort zone really is just a great way to keep your brain active, right? And
absolutely.
engaged. And both of those things, of course, are also like key components to mental health.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Ah, lovely. Yeah, no, it's been fantastic having you on. And do you have any final words you'd like to share with my audience?
Um, oh gosh, I'm really bad at final words because I like to talk. But I would say this, take a look at what you do right,
Okay.
because there's so much that we do, especially as women.
Yeah.
We just do incredible things all the time, and even in the ways that we're socialized in our femininity and as women, and even in gender roles that we interpret as negative because they can be constricting, and that is true. But what can also be true is the fact that we can operate in these ways. It
Yeah.
means that we have incredible skills. And I
Agree.
really would love to see us as women. I don't mean like trad wife thing, but
Yeah.
like I'd love to see us applauding those skills. Like, you know what? If I can juggle two small children and a podcast and a trauma-based practice and still, get myself together every day and ask intelligent questions and contribute all these things to the world, that's amazing. That's
Oh,
amazing.
I love that. Oh, excellent. Oh, I think that's fantastic. And you're right, we're so hard on ourselves, aren't we? We self-sabotage, thinking, oh my God, I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. But we don't.
No, we're already doing, the lion's share.
Yeah, exactly. So, oh, I love that. And just accept yourself, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
accept who you are. Yeah, and what you do.
Accept who you are, and and
Mm,
and yeah, just recognize what you do well.
mm.
Even small things, doing the dishes, you do it well. Can you stack a dishwasher well? Fantastic. That's
Wow.
a skill.
That yeah, it's a skill. Oh my goodness. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. Wow. So where can everyone find you if they wish to sign up to your program, or if they want to train with you?
Yeah.
Mm.
We have classes going on wherever we have trainers, which is all over the world. So anyone who's interested in taking a course can visit prettydeadlyselfdefense.com,
Mhm.
which I know is a mouthful, but it's easy to remember. Our classes are listed under the Find a Class page. And if you're interested in becoming an instructor, you can do that too. That's under the Become an Instructor page. It's pretty self-evident.
It's
The
fine.
website. Hopefully, nothing is hidden. Yeah, and we also have a podcast. Currently, I'm actually recounting the event that put me on this path in life. So,
Oh,
if you're interested in true crime, listen in. If you're easily
mm.
triggered, do not tune in. It's
Ah,
not
okay.
a nice story, but it's a story that needs to be told. Yeah, and join our newsletter and come enter our platform and find all the great things that we have for you to help remind you how fantastic you are.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, and I will be adding the links in this podcast. So absolutely, yeah, you can connect on socials or whatever platforms you're on.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
absolutely.
We're all over the place. We're on
All
all the
over.
socials, and please check in and follow us, and
Perfect.
we'll follow back. And we would love to meet you at a course or workshop or certification or just out on the street for a cup of coffee.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Susie. You've been an absolute honor talking today and just inspiring everyone. I just think it's fantastic what you're doing, and just keep thriving and keep saving lives.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I admire the work you're doing too. And I think it's so important that we have people across the entire spectrum
Mm,
helping people work through trauma and live fuller lives. Your work is just as important.
yeah,
And
thank you.
and I'm glad to be connected. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, that's it, my friends. That's all we have time for today, and I shall see you in the next show.